I'm so excited to talk to you today. Thank you for doing it, reaching out
No
to me.
problem.
Yeah. Why don't you just tell me your story?
Well, basically, I have disabilities that I guess are considered invisible disabilities, like that have never been formally diagnosed. So instead of them not being diagnosed, teachers and professionals thought that I was special education. They didn't really understand that, some people learn differently, some people's brains function differently, and it has nothing to do with their intelligence.
Right. Asking, so you said they've never been diagnosed, but what disabilities did you experience or what?
I mean, one has been diagnosed officially.
Okay.
But basically, ADHD. I've been diagnosed with severe ADHD. And I'm 38, so I was just diagnosed like 2 years, a year and a half. You can imagine, why. I mean, the thing is, I think it's sometimes diagnosed late, especially in women, because academically I was okay.
Right.
But I was never. I also have dyspraxia. I don't know if you're familiar with dyspraxia.
I'm not. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Dyspraxia is trouble with coordination.
Okay.
It's kind of called developmental coordination disorder. So I always had trouble tying my shoe, like gross motor tasks, which of course can affect you in the occupational world, And so those are the main disabilities I have. That one was officially diagnosed, but I have trouble with my nation, severe ADHD, and I have neurodivergence. So I don't know if it's classed as a disability. It definitely is. It definitely makes it hard. It's definitely not mainstream. I think that when people see that, they don't really understand.
Right. And can you talk a little bit about for me, because I know when you were talking about the coordination stuff, I know for me having cerebral palsy, I had a really hard time I was really late also in learning to tie my shoes and things like that. Did you have experience?
Yeah, I was actually late walking and everything, not talking. I talked way before. But I was kind of late, now I won't shut up, but I was late walking and those things. And it was never picked up. And when I was in elementary school, my teacher also said that I have trouble organizing my books and materials and things like that. And that was never addressed. I think that maybe that had to do with a lot of the stuff going on neurologically.
Sure, yeah.
So, and I just went through life, like they say, if you have someone with all these kind of disability, they're not like visual, but I think that people have a harder time understanding them. It's not someone in a wheelchair. Not
right.
But they say that if you not giving someone with these resources, almost like having someone without a ramp for a wheelchair. It's like they're not accommodating. You know what I'm saying? They're not understanding that someone learns differently, thinks differently, their brain is different. So I think that makes it a lot harder, especially in invisible as well.
Right.
Because a lot of people well, you don't look disabled, or what's your disability? And I also struggle with and I don't talk about it a lot with people. I struggle with PCOS, PMDD, and also chronic pain and fibromyalgia. And I remember someone called that the yuppie. You know what I'm saying? They think it's kind of well, you're not really disabled. You know what I'm saying? But they are disabilities. They do. Chronic illness does that.
Right, sure.
In your function. I think that I was never given any diagnosis. I was just kind of put out there. And I don't know. I have diagnosed with autism. But I think I'm on the spectrum somewhat. And I never knew about masking until recently. So I realized that everything I was doing was pretty much masking. I knew I had different, but I never had any.
So masking your disabilities is what you're saying?
Yeah. That's what I've always done.
Yeah.
Mask.
And I think too, appreciate what you're saying about the invisible disabilities, because I know I've talked about with my situation, my chair is very obvious, right? So that leads to the discussion, but there are, and I think that's why I wanted to have you on. I think it's so important for people to realize just because it's not a disability that you can't see doesn't mean it's not a disability. And people are living with that every day. And one thing that stuck out to me from what you just said when I was listening to you and I are exactly the same age. And my parents went through the same thing, sort of trying to get me diagnosed. I was pretty far along, but but not near as far along as you. But I think with that being an invisible disability and the things that you've had, again, those resources were just not available to you, and nobody was really paying attention.
They weren't paying attention, and also my father didn't want to pay. He didn't really want to pay for testing. I also have something called Leah, which has actually diagnosed, which is I've noticed it. No one, it's like Leah with numbers. I always had trouble, but now I didn't know I had. I'm not that I was bad at math.
Right.
It's nobody was paying attention to these things are happening and why are they happening?
Right.
So it's this dyscalculia you have trouble. I always wondered how come I'm in all AP classes, everything else, in math I'm struggling, and also like we have facial. I haven't officially done.
Yeah, and I think too, and I don't know if you've listened to any of the previous of my podcast, but when I was telling my story, for me with my cerebral palsy, because it is a brain injury, I have a lot of trouble with math also, and anything to do with measurement or space is very difficult for me.
Too. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about what it's done with you in regards to relating to your friends or your family? Have you found those relationships difficult? What do you have as far as a support system?
Well, I think that for a lot of my life, most of my life, I had friends that understood me, and I have a friend where I am. But I think that another thing, I think a lot of people like this, and others with mental illness too.
Sure.
And I think really understand that, like, it's not, probably with you, even if you're in a wheelchair, people talk to people in a wheelchair like maybe they can't understand things, or maybe, you know what I'm saying? And it's like,
yeah,
they're not, Jen, it's a disability, like a neurological disability. Yeah, you have differences, like some people have tics, or they, like they stim,
yeah,
like that. But it's not mental. Don't actually like brain difference.
it's a brain injury. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So not like a mental illness. So I think that more like mental illnesses can come from. I think maybe if I had any mental illness, maybe they came from not no one paying attention to going on, and then like the way that people treated me, because not really knowing what it is.
Right. Some of what was that like as far as people treating you differently, or in school? Do you want to talk a little bit about that? And
well,
maybe.
I think like in school, I would always be like, they thought that I like slumped.
Gotcha. Okay.
And they didn't want to put me in like advanced classes, or they want to like, I started reading full books when I was like 4 years old, and they wanted to put me in like a resource room for people who like couldn't read. You know what I'm saying? Like I think
right.
They didn't quite understand, like maybe if there were social differences or whatever. I mean, I think it does put barriers up, especially when people don't understand what you're going through and how to process things.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I can see that. Talk to me a little bit about, because I don't know that much about it, and I'm here to learn along with everybody else that's going to hear this. Can you talk to us a little bit about, because I think people with ADHD and severe ADHD are vastly misunderstood and mischaracterized. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is, and and I know it's different for everybody, but what it looks like for you on a daily basis? Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Well, there's different types of ADHD. There's inattentive, there's hyperactive. Mm-hmm. So there's ADHD is the attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Mm-hmm. So some people are more inattentive, some people are more hyperactive. And an attentive type, like people would always get at me like when I'm losing things or I'm forgetting things, but it's like they don't understand that when you have ADHD, your brain is not, it's like executive functioning. Your brain is not processing things in a sequence like other people's brain. Like for most people, they're remembering, you know what I'm saying? And it clicks.
Right.
Like I forget a lot of things, like I can't concentrate on things. It's hard to get motivated, but it's not laziness. I think a lot of people confuse it for like, and then they'll say, oh, I get kind of ADHD. I have that too. I forget things. They almost make it like, you can help it. Like if you just like, you have to pay attention more. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
I'm always losing my keys. Like, why don't you put your keys in one place? Well, that would help if I could remember to do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I did that, I wouldn't lose my keys. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like how you're processing things. And in girls, it tends to be underdiagnosed. And also,
okay.
If you like, for me, academically, I'm not saying I was great academically, but I was pretty good academically. Went to college. I got a master's. So a lot of times.
Oh, what's your master's in?
Modern literature.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, and I took some, but a lot of times people will say, well, you went to college, or you did this, or you took CLAD, or you got a master's, so how ADHD? Like, how can you have a disability? And that's what they don't understand, that a lot of times, because I was doing okay in school, and I was, you know what I'm saying? Like, they don't really see the need to diagnose it, because, like, well, if you could do it academically, but they don't understand that it's like so many other things. There's so many other components. There's social components of it, like just the executive functioning, just the concentration, poor concentration, memory, and they don't understand that it's like not something that you can just. Like, it's like if someone said you're in a wheelchair, why don't you just walk? You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
They don't understand. It's like, but then if you could do that, you wouldn't. Like, they're not understanding that it's differences, really. And I think that disabilities are just really like different.
Right.
We just call them disabilities, but it's just differences that people can't understand. So
Right.
people don't understand because they don't have that. Their brain is not. You know, their brain is not like they're processing information in a regular way. They're neurotypical.
Right.
So.
And can you talk through a little bit too? And that's some very good information that you just provided, I think, too. Can you talk through a little bit about your journey to being diagnosed and what that's looked like, even from the beginning, and then finally getting the diagnosis for, especially for the ADHD?
Well, I got the diagnosis. I mean, I was just kind of. I had a feeling that I had ADHD, but like. Other mental health professionals were saying I'm bipolar, because they always like to say bipolar, you know what I'm saying, which,
Right.
I mean, I don't really understand what that is. I mean, it's very vague, you know.
Right.
But, and I said, you know, why am I losing my keys, and, like, I really have trouble, you know, keeping up my household, and forget, you know what I'm saying? And people would just make it like, well, you gotta pay. They would say, like, you know, you just gotta be more careful. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I thought, because I've always been criticized about that. You know what I'm saying? So then I finally said, I wanna I wanna go to a specialist for ADHD, and they gave like tests, which I don't really know. I forgot what it was called, and I'm not really sure if I can really trust the results of that. But they did diagnose ADHD, and it was pretty late. But nobody wanted to believe I had ADHD. They just wanted to say I'm lazy and stuff like that. So nobody was really thinking I had ADHD.
Okay.
But you're making excuses for yourself.
For yourself.
You're not being careful. You're not.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. And so
I got diagnosed late in life because whenever I had trouble before, like books and materials, no one ever said like, "Hey, maybe there's something going on." You know? I was always just forced to, you know, I was criticized, like, you know, you got to pay more attention, or you got to do this, or just people who didn't have it would tell me, well, I do this. Why? How I organize things, but my brain is not working that way.
Right, and it's hard for people to understand that and then approach you in a way that's helpful for your situation. So what is the? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no. What were you asking?
I was gonna ask, and what about in terms of your family? How friendships are one thing, but families can be very different. How has that in fact impacted your family and your support system there?
Well, I mean, luckily I've had my family there. At least my family never really acknowledged it.
Okay.
So it was more like, you know, what am I doing? At least my dad's side of the family, it was always a focus on, you know, working, and if I'm not succeeding at work, then I must have studied the wrong thing, or, you know, or I gotta be more careful.
Okay, gotcha.
There was no acknowledgement of it. It was just more like, what am I doing wrong?
Right, so there wasn't even any discussion with regards to that. Okay.
And then if I did discuss it, then I wouldn't get any support. I mean, my mother was supportive, and but my father said he didn't even want to pay for testing to test if I had it or anything.
Okay.
So, and if I told my family that, you know, if I wasn't, you know, if I that side of the family, they would just tell me what I could do more. You know what I'm saying? Like, almost like, oh, this is you know, like.
Yeah, this is what you need to do, or this is what you should do. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you have any siblings?
No.
No, you don't have any siblings.
No. But I had a friend, well, she passed away, but she was almost like my sister, and she also struggled with dyspraxia and things like that, so we really understood each other, you know? She had and she was not given the supports that she needed in school. So, like, you know, I think a lot of times it's just like, ignored, not addressed.
Right.
I think it should.
Absolutely. And, you know, on that, yeah, and.
Oh, sorry. You know, that people with neurological differences, like, I've learned that maybe 9 to 5 isn't the way. You know what I'm saying? Everyone wants to put everyone in, like, you can't put a round peg in a square hole. You know
right.
What I'm saying? So I think that neurodivergent people, disabled people, or whatever, they can do a lot of things that, like, maybe they're not the standard, but they can be very valuable in the workforce if they're given the accommodation.
Right. And, you know, on that note, I kind of wanted to go into that because that has come up a little bit now, too. And I know my experiences in the workforce have been good and then not so good, you know, depending on where I was at. Do you want to go into a little bit more? Can you tell us about, you know, what you've done for work and what you've experienced in the negative and the positive? Because I think, you know, you have some really good insight into that, especially for the disabilities that are unseen. Can you talk a little bit about your journey there?
Well, I think because I never knew that I had, it's like I was going through life, you know, getting fired from jobs or being let go, and I had no idea what was happening. I'm saying because maybe I wasn't aware, you know, but I think it's also unfair that, like, but I didn't know I had going on.
Right.
So, I mean, you know, so I've worked in clothing mag for a while, and then I worked in IT, which I think that like actually, I think IT is a pretty good field, but I pretty much got that job through nepotism, and I learned on the job. So I was a technical writer. I learned technical writing.
Oh, okay.
And I did that for a while, and then I haven't been working full time, but then I realized that the best way for me to work is do freelance and more like work remotely. I think that, and I wanted to find how I would work best. So, because not every 9 to 5.
Right.
So,
Sure.
Also, it was just too exhausting. Like not like my body, brain, it wasn't working that
Right.
way. So,
and I think this brings up a bigger question too, and I think what you said is so important because I know I've been experiencing that obviously with my disability. As I've gotten older, things have gotten harder, and I think for employers, they're going to have to decide, like you said, you may not be able to do the normal 9 to 5, but when you're there, the work that you're doing counts and the work that you're doing is good. So I think it's a big message for employers to start opening things up for people with disabilities and maybe adapting their work schedules and deciding that maybe it's
exactly because when I've been fired from a lot of jobs, and I know that I got there on time, and I know the work that I did was always good. Like I have a lot to contribute. It's
right.
Just not in the, you know what I'm saying? It's not in the way that everyone else does it. It's just like it's the same thing about like if someone has a wheelchair, they need a ramp. Like if someone has something, they need at least to recognize. I have this limitation. And you're right, the employers have to, they can work around this because the neurodivergent people and disabled people have a lot that they can contribute uniquely to the work.
Right.
And, they're not seeing it that way.
And I think...
because the main purpose of is just to be like workers and robots and just push out profit. So that's part of it too.
And I think... I can relate to what you're saying, obviously but I think with, my situation, one of the things that's gotten more frustrating with me, and I'm sure you can relate to me on this. One of the things that I run into is, when you're working, for a company or an office, you have set times that you can take breaks or lunches. And for me, when I go to the bathroom because of my situation, it takes, 15 minutes. So if I have a 15-minute break, all of that time for that 15 minutes is used to use the restroom, and there's no time for anything else to get anything to eat or, something like that. Or sometimes, going to the bathroom can take even longer. And having to constantly explain and advocate for the fact that I need more time or this is what's taking so long when I'm doing my job, I'm doing it well, it becomes very exhausting and very frustrating to constantly have to explain to people. Like, when I tell you I'm in the bathroom for 25 minutes, I'm in the bathroom for 25 minutes. You know what I mean?
They're not understanding, what do you, again, they're probably saying, what were you doing for all that time? It's like, no, I was transparent with you. I'm
right.
having trouble,
right.
And it's just, that's why, I just find the workplace very toxic, and, I'm not working I'm working here and there, but I really just rather do my own thing, if I can.
Right.
Make my own hours.
And I really admire you for, you're setting a really good example for me, even because I'm getting to the point where I don't know if full-time work is something that I'm going to be able to continue doing for the reasons that you've just stated. And it's been hard for me to let go of that because I have worked full-time, and I feel very fortunate to have done so because there's plenty of people, with seen or unseen disabilities that would love to work full-time, and don't get that opportunity to. So I've been kind of in my own struggle trying to figure out, but I don't know how much longer it's sustainable. And I think it would be less stressful for us in the disabled community if employers would really set the tone and decide, that they want employees that are doing the quality work like you and I and so many others. So
you know what else I think also I think society puts our whole worth on whether we're working or not, and I think that put a lot of pressure. I know that because I don't have I know that my father really puts it on job. He'll criticize. Well, that wasn't a full. I know that there's a lot of pressure, and then I remember reading this article about this woman who she was on disability and she just didn't work, and she was just saying that she was just accepting herself, and then she did her paintings and things like that, and then whenever she did whenever I do any creative work, I like to do photography and stuff like that, my father's always asking about did I make money for it, or if I say that I got a lot, I put photos on Google and got over 4 million No, but it's like, oh, they're putting adverts. It's always about, like, even with her paintings, it was always about, is she selling it? And she's like, no, you know what I'm saying? Like, we've got to change this. And my friend who passed away, it's so hard because she agreed with me. We've got to change the attitude that we have about people and working, you know what I'm saying? And putting everything. And I'm really trying to just accept myself, saying, you know what? I got to the point where I said, okay, maybe full-time work isn't for me. Maybe I can't work at all. And, you know, either way, like, I'm still valid. You know what I'm
Sure.
saying? Like, you're still
Yes,
valid. And I
absolutely.
think that's hard. Because
Yeah.
I think that in our culture, you know what I'm saying? What's the point of, we can't fit ourselves into something we can't do. And I think, like, with masking, what you do, I think I've done that, and I do these things because we're guilted so much about, well, we have to do this. You know what I'm saying? So.
Right. And I think the one thing that I've had that I was fortunate with is the masking, and I do tend to do that with people that don't know me. I'm thankful that I had a really good support system, family and friends around, and my mother thankfully is very supportive. She's a nurse, and she's always telling me, because there's sometimes where I'm sick that I shouldn't be working, and I feel like I have to because I have to go that extra mile, and she's really helped me see that eventually that's just not going to cut it. I'm just not going to be.
That's how my mom was. I was very lucky. My mother was extremely supportive of me and my activity, and she was like, my mother was very supportive, and she didn't want me to overwork.
Right.
Like, it reminds me of a friend I just spoke to, and she has long COVID, and she's not feeling well a lot of the times, and she's overworking herself.
Right.
And I told her, maybe you can. She's like, I really shouldn't be working this much. And then we work ourselves into the ground, and then eventually we can't work because we're overextending ourselves. You know what I'm saying? So it's not that I don't want to work. I just think that, like, also, I think I've learned what style I work in best, I think that makes a difference. We know, like, knowing what your limitations are, knowing what accommodations knowing that maybe, okay, so maybe I'm not a 9 to 5 person, but I still want to do so. I still want to contribute. I still want to try to work. I still want to try to do whatever I can do in the confines of my disability or my needs or my limitations or whatever.
Right.
And I think we have to lift the shame off that, because I think there's a lot of shame in it. There's a lot of shaming, and I think that, I don't think it's right.
No, I agree with you completely, and I think too, and I don't know, maybe I feel like you and I are on the same page with this, but the other thing that gets exhausting is sort of the hypocrisy that goes along with it too. And what I mean by that is, so in my case, and I've talked about this other times, like you were saying, like, first it's that you don't do anything, and then if you do something, then you're not getting paid for it, you're getting criticized for that. I know in my situation, with everything that's gone on with healthcare and all of that, the last couple of years, when we went to privatization here in the state that I live in, when they did that, well, I lost all of my services. So I lost.
The thing that's a problem, because my father also made me like adult disabled child.
Right.
So like then it's almost like, okay, so he would do that, and I'm only allowed a certain amount on fines or whatever.
Yes.
And then you're telling me, why don't you make a lot of money? It doesn't make sense. It's like that. How can you say that and then you want me to make a lot of money when I'm not allowed to? It's almost like you want to keep me in a trap.
Right. And in my case, what happened when I lost all of my services, because, and this will make you laugh, because I was too independent, which is what is listed on the thing. I remember saying, because I didn't have any way to get back and forth to work, and they said, well, right now with the way that this is set up, because you have the disability that you do and you are independent, we can only provide you transportation to doctor's appointments. And I said, well, that's great, but I don't need the rides to doctor's appointments. I need it for work. And I said, is there any way? I said, so what is a way that I can get access to all those services that I had? And it literally was the person at the office, the representative that was talking, said, if you quit your job, you can get all your services back.
See, that's the thing. Yeah, for your job.
Yeah, and I'm not in a position to be able to do that. You know what I mean?
That is hypocrisy. It's almost like saying, well, we want you to be independent. It's almost like what my dad's trying. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
like, well, you want me to be independent, and then how can you tell me that and complain I'm not making enough money? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You can't both, either or. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think they make things very difficult for the disabled.
Right. And I think that leads into what you were talking about, not being able to win either way, because then you have people, it always amazes me too when you have something like that happening to me or you or anybody else in the disabled community, and then it seems to be the same people that are bitching, I don't even know a better word for it, are bitching about people, taking advantage of services. Well, what do you want then? You can't have it both ways.
That's the thing. It's like, so you're getting these services, but sometimes need it, or, because when you have a chronic illness, people don't understand. Like someone told my father, just have her work through it. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes
Right.
you can't.
Right. And I think too, it's amazing. It's just one of those things, and I don't know about you, but I've certainly, in the last year or two, I've become so exhausted with trying to explain it to people in a way that makes sense, because to me, it feels like, and not always, and that's, kind of the point of this podcast, is so that people like you, and people like me and the people that have reached out to me can come on and we can have that platform, but it gets so exhausting having to explain everything constantly.
It is, and also it's really no one's business, to be honest. I mean, they're not
Right.
owed it,
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, absolutely. And
I really don't tell anyone I have disabilities. I don't tell them, I try to just say, oh yeah, I'm a free, I haven't really, I like this podcast because I've never been vocal about my disabilities. None of my friends really know about it. I never, I don't really say that. I just pretend, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Talk about work. I just say, oh, I'm a freelancer, I'm this and that. Very few people know that I have abilities.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. It means a lot to me that this is one that you wanted to come on. It means.
I did want to come on because I'm finally at a point where, I'm very independent. I have my own apartment. I learned the law myself. I drive. I do have my own money. I invest. I make my own money. And I got to the point where I just said to myself, I came this far. Why should I have to be ashamed of something I can't control? And why should I have to hide it? You know what I'm saying? Just because of other people. So I think it's like taking that power back and saying, okay, I do have these disabilities. So what?
Right.
So what?
And I think what you said is just so powerful. And I don't think I realized that a lot of the stuff, or a lot of the frustrations I was feeling, or I would ever vocalize it out loud. I think I'm learning, there is shame involved.
Yes.
And there shouldn't be. And I get frustrated myself for admitting that I feel that, but I think lifting the shame off of it is one of the main reasons why I wanted to do this as well. Because
lifting the shame, and that's why I really that's kind of like why I wanted to do it, because I think that we are shamed into that we're different, and we're shamed into silence really about it. We're shamed into, why don't we fit the mold? Why don't we do more things to fit the mold? And I just said to myself, you know what? I'm not going to be ashamed of it anymore, because number one, it's not our fault. We can't control it, and we just have different. Why does everyone have to be the same too? So
right.
I think it's very empowering to, especially as a woman too.
Sure, absolutely, yeah, and I think and especially for other minorities as well that are disabled, Black, Hispanic, they're on the margins also, and that's a platform that I really want to utilize as well. There's all these people in the disabled community around it that are just being like you said, shamed into silence when it's just not necessary.
I mean, that's how it sounds like I am. Like, I just don't talk about it because I just pretend like, I don't have it. That doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, I'm just going to pretend. Like, wait, people are noticing,
And you're screwed either way, essentially. And
this is something else I want to address because I go on Facebook. I think also disclosing you have a disability, I would always tell someone never disclose it. And I hate to say that because I think that people have this idea of the ADA and its functions, and when they say we're not going to discriminate, it's all total horseshit. I hate to say.
Totally.
So I would never disclose. They're like, should I disclose it? I never disclose I have a disability because then you're fucked either way too. Because when they hear that you have a disability, they're not thinking how can we accommodate you. They're thinking of their asses, essentially. You know what I'm saying?
No, I
would never disclose. That's what I would tell people. Like, oh, but it says, like they would say, should I disclose it? It says, ADA, and I would just never disclose. Obviously, if they see in a wheelchair or something like that, they know they have a disability. But I just told people that not to disclose it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't. And even for somebody in a wheelchair, I can tell you right now, I used to say something before I would go in for interviews, and now I don't do that because.
That's what I'm saying. Don't. That's what I'm saying. Like, you don't say something, and that's really sad that you can't.
Right, but you can't. Yeah, you can't. And I don't know about you, but and I mean especially in your case, I would imagine, but for me, like there's been so many times, especially in workplaces, where I can almost guarantee you that I was discriminated against based on my disability, but there's no way for me to prove that.
That's the thing. And you also don't want to be like, but I don't think people understand that disabled people are not looking for pity. They're not looking for, like, I don't like people who are condescending. They're not looking for that. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? You're not disclosing your disability. Like, you may be in a wheelchair, but that's not who you are.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
your disability is not who you are. It's like, no, I'm applying for a job, and these are the qualifications I have, and my wheelchair is just something I have, these disabilities something I have to deal with every day, and that's all it is. And I think a lot of people are so ignorant that if you tell them I'm in a wheelchair, then they have this kind of, that's what, I'm glad you agree with me about not closing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I think it's sad that it has to be that way because it should,
Also, like with mental illness, like if you experience mental illness, that's another thing. I don't know if you would talk about a podcast. I don't know. Well, it can be considered disability. I think the way when you have a mental illness are treated, it's like you're treated like as a dangerous person, like there's no understanding of it. And I think they're very stigmatized, and especially mental illness. I would never disclose a mental illness.
Oh no.
Because, and the thing is, what people don't understand is a mental illness is not something dangerous. Yet again, it's a difference. That's all it is. It's a difference. Like, especially mental illness, I would never disclose.
Right. Yeah. And it's just and it's crazy that people still have to do that.
Yeah. And like if receiving disability for like mental illness, like I would never admit it, or like that would be, you know what I'm saying? And I think that we're shamed into it.
And I think.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh no. Go ahead.
It's like what if you had cancer? What if someone had AIDS? What if someone had this? Why would they be shamed for that? You know what I'm saying? It's like these things happen, and it really should be more accepted into just something that's different, something that has to be accommodated instead of this big mysterious thing, or especially in a wheelchair. Like I know how you must feel being in a wheelchair, and this is what I think. You're just coming out saying, this is, I have all these skills, I have this, and I bet you that the wheelchair, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. They kind of like make that a big issue.
They do.
And
yeah.
The point is like when I'm speaking to you, what is Sarah? Sorry, when I'm speaking, like you're Sarah, you're not a girl in a wheelchair. You know what I'm saying? People reduce people like, oh, the girl in the wheelchair. Maybe I'm wrong, but I can't.
No,
it's like,
you're not.
My friend in a wheelchair. She's in a wheelchair. It's like, but that's not who I am. I'm Sarah. I'm Sarah. I do
right.
this. I do that. I work as this. It's not the girl in a wheelchair. You know what I'm saying? That's just actually probably that's a part of you that you have to deal with, but it's probably not the main focus of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't want people to think of you as someone in a wheelchair, and which they're so shallow. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And no, you're definitely not wrong about that, and that leads me into a good point that you made. And I think and I have had bad experiences with employers, but I've also had very good ones, and that has saved me where they didn't notice I was in a wheelchair. That that was not the main issue. So for all the bad, I've had a lot of good too. But I will say, and it was a very important point that you brought up about the ADA, and this is something I've been saying since the beginning of the podcast. I'll do a whole episode on it. People assume that just because the ADA is in place, that means that it takes care of everything for us in the disabled community. It doesn't take care of anything because, and also people are not understanding the last time that the ADA was revived, it was 1992. So nothing. So and I use this example all the time, but just because the ADA says, and due to the ADA, well, the reason why is because everybody's going according to the ADA in 1992.
They don't give a shit about laws.
Right. And also, the other thing is, too, because they're following the ADA from 1992, you go into a restaurant and they say, yeah, you ask for an accessible restroom. They say, yeah, we have it. Well, according to the ADA in 1992, an accessible restroom is a regular-sized stall with one bar in it. Well, yeah, but what I was going to say was, well, that's great, but I can't fit my chair in there. The stall's no bigger. There's just a bar,
And I feel like the ADA is kind of there, I hate to say it, to protect the businesses more than it is to protect the disabled.
Very much so.
That sounds crazy because we live in a corporate world that's driven by money. So, I mean, people think that disabled people have all these rights, but the ADA is basically just a protection that they put in place so they don't get sued.
Right.
A lot of times. So, and also, I have to say, disabilities, but when my mother was alive, she actually had a walker and a wheelchair and everything. So I never knew about physical disability like that. But I experienced so many things with her. Maybe I could talk about another, terrible thing, how she was treated. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Can you give us a couple of examples, if you don't mind?
Yeah, like I remember that I called a lift for me and my mother. And maybe I should have called the, bigger lift or whatever. And I remember he came and he stopped in front of our house, stopped in front of my mother, and he just sped away.
Oh my gosh.
Starting to get in the car. Almost like, he didn't want to deal with that.
Oh my gosh.
And, I was waiting with my mother for the lift. I had called the lift. And I didn't think I had to, well, I should have used the Uber, Lyft has different vehicles or whatever, but I didn't know. You know what I'm saying? There's so many different ways he could have done it, and he came and he stopped, and I just have to get my mother in there because I would have to, I took care of her. I brought her walker in when she had a walker, and he came and he was kind of oh, she's handicapped, and then he stopped, I was about to get her in, and he just sped away. That's one example. Of that. Oh
my god. Well, and this is an example that, since you were kind enough to share that with us, I'll share one that I haven't shared before. I don't work at that place anymore, but there was a particular place where I worked for a number of years, and when I initially had gotten the job there weren't any automatic doors to go into the building, and thankfully, my boss had my boss's boss and my boss had experiences with people with disabilities, and so they said, well, since we're going to have her here, and I could be misspeaking, but from what I know, I was the only one at that point with a physical disability that needed that, and so they really advocated for those automatic doors, and I thought that was great. But then what happened it wasn't my boss's fault. They obviously had wanted the automatic doors on the front doors. Yeah. But the people that approved the automatic doors thought it was too expensive to do the very front door, so their solution was to do a side door, like a back door to the building, and it would open up. But the thing is when it opened up, there would be a line of cubicles where people were sitting, and if it was windy, it was literally right next to the concrete steps that you go up to the building for. So you had to maneuver around that to make sure you didn't fall. And then you open this door and everybody's papers would just go flying because the wind would hit. Now I've made it, and these poor people, I'm telling you, they were like, who decided to put an automatic door right there? And my bosses were livid. And I mean,
that's who decided.
Yeah. And my bosses, and I mean, God bless them, they really went to the mat for me on that. And they were like, this is stupid. First of all, we have her going in a side door, so that says something right there, And second of all, it's not safe. And then thirdly, all these people are being disrupted. I mean, people would have papers flying off their cubicles, no joke. And then I would have to maneuver through. And I spent every day going, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And then, literally, people would start holding down papers on each side of their desk so they didn't blow off every time I came by. And I was like, well, if it wasn't obvious before, it's obvious now.
And maybe you felt a little bit bad about that, too.
And they knew it wasn't my fault, but it was more of what idiot decided that putting it in the side door with all these cubicles was a good place to go? And I really wanted to say, did putting it on a side door as opposed to the front door really save you that much money? Because I'm finding it hard to believe that it did. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's just crazy. Yeah.
I don't know if you feel the same way, that you feel that people have made, and I could be wrong, so forgive me if you're wrong. I feel like maybe you think that people have made your wheelchair almost your whole identity, and maybe they felt sorry for you, or maybe they've given you been condescending, and that's actually not productive. To treat you, maybe they've treated you, they don't understand that this is just a wheelchair, you need this to get around. Maybe they've extended it to other judge out you. I could be wrong.
No, you're not wrong. No, I don't think you're wrong at all. I think I think you have good insight into that, and it's like you said too, it's hard because it's a balance, right? Because I need the fact that I need adaptions acknowledged, but it's everything that I am and nothing that I am all at the same time. And trying to explain that to people who have not lived with me, like my family, or see me every day, those adaptions need to be in place, but if you give me those, I can work hard for you. You know what I mean? So it's that delicate balance of always trying to figure out, this is a huge part of me, but it's not a part of me at the same time.
With me, this is a part of me, but it's things that I can contribute. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and
I have insight. I have skills. I mean, maybe they're not the occupational skills that everyone thinks about, but I have very good, like in my brain, I'm very organized, not externally. You know what I'm saying? So
right.
I mean, I'm very punctual. I'm very concerned with time. I'm really dedicated, and I really like want to make sure my work is good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I think that I have all the good intentions to work, and I've never really been successful in the workplace. I think it's because it wasn't the right type of workplace for
Sure.
me. And again, so it was just learning that, and I've had to do all this myself, realize, this is the way I can work, this is the way that I can function. In order for me to thrive, that I need these certain things. And there's nothing wrong with it. So, I mean, not everybody can thrive in the same environment. We're
right. And I think too, and I don't know about you, one of the things that I'm really working on, and especially over the past year, is I've just gotten, and I didn't even realize I was doing it so much, but I think, and I don't know what's happened to me over the past year, and it is something that I'm still working on. It's a struggle for me, because I tend to be a people pleaser, in an extent, but I've really tried hard to focus on. I got so tired of, especially over the last year and a half, apologizing, like.
Oh yeah, I apologize, but I'm desperate. I pretty much hate everyone.
Well, and my thing is like when I need to ask for an adaption or different things like that, I catch myself saying, I'm sorry, and I've really tried hard to focus on not saying I'm sorry so much because I don't have any reason to be sorry,
I think that's actually another part of it, that it's that shame.
Right.
That shame, like, why should you feel sorry about asking about something you need? And I feel that hesitation too. I don't like to ask for help.
Right.
And then I feel ashamed. But it's like, you know what? At the end of the day, everyone needs help sometimes.
Right.
Everyone. All of us. There's no one who doesn't need help. There's no one in this world who can say they never.
Right. Yeah.
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 So, and I think that also that goes into like kind of the ableism. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Sure.
Like, well, why are you acting this way? Or why aren't you doing this? Because that's assuming that we're all the same.
Right. Yeah.
And I realize a lot of this stuff I would do at work, or maybe other stuff that people would get offended. I think I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have insight to what I was doing wrong. So
right.
I could never correct it. And then people would be upset with me, but it's like I never knew what was going on.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying my best here, people. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I remember, I interned at Marvel Comics when I was 21.
Oh, cool.
I was very lucky. I mean, it's very rare to get that opportunity.
Yes, good for you.
And they put me in the worst possible place. They put me like in the front desk, like
right.
worker. You know what I'm saying? And I remember like I was upset because I didn't get credit for it. And I came every day. I came to Manhattan every day. The office was on Madison Ave. And I was very young at that time. Basically, I just had to answer the phone, and I had to like sort. Well, any submissions that came in would just go straight to the garbage.
Yeah.
But I would just be doing like clerical work, which isn't. I don't think that's within, especially with my disability. I don't think that's like my strength.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, like I worked there, and they were gonna put me in editorial, but like something happened. I didn't get credit for it, which wasn't really fair because I did the work. I showed up every day. Like I show up. I really do try to be a good worker. You know what I'm saying? I really try to like, show up.
Sure.
And then my mother didn't tell me like years later there was some type of mailing to go in, or maybe I broke the shredder machine. I had no idea. I'm like, you didn't tell me that? Like something happened that was like maybe I broke I broke the machine or something. And it's like, I didn't know that happened, and it's almost like, but I had no insight to, like, what happened. And whatever I did, I didn't do it on purpose.
Right, sure.
And people think, like, oh, why is she doing this? She's just such a you know what I'm saying? But it wasn't, I had no idea. Like, if they had addressed it, if someone had addressed it and said no. But it's like, people expect you to know these kind of, I'm sure that was a result of maybe my ADHD or something.
Right, and then you lose it. Yeah, and you lose out on opportunities when you don't even know what you've done wrong too. That's that's difficult.
That's the thing. I didn't know, and that was a great opportunity. They wanted me to intern in editorial, and to even work at Marvel is very hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure.
So the thing is because so in other words, most of the times I've been let go, it doesn't have to do with my work. Do you understand what I'm saying? It doesn't have to
absolutely.
Do with the fact that I show up.
Sure, absolutely.
And I didn't know what was going on. Like, and it's like I never knew what I was doing wrong. So then I just kept doing it. If I don't know what I'm doing wrong, then how can I correct it?
Right, exactly. Yes.
I mean, I would work very hard and I would show up. Like, I wasn't the type of person who just would show up to work late every day. Like, I was never late to work or anything. I was never that type of person. So I never understood why I could never hold a job
Right.
for a long time. And now that I have insight, and now that I'm kind of letting go of the shame and everything, I'm saying to myself, I can work, but it's going to have to be a different style of work. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, better on my own. But it's taken a lot to come to that realization, and just it's just self-acceptance.
Yeah. Well, and I think. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No,
I was just gonna say. I think that's gonna be really when we air this episode. That's really going to be something because I haven't talked a whole lot about work situations yet, and I think your story is really gonna help a lot of people. So I want to thank you for talking to me and.
Oh, no problem. And you know what? I love to talk again, talk more about this because this really, I feel good about being able to talk because I can't talk about other people. They really don't understand.
Right.
And if I can help I feel like I can help other people. I think that would be good if we can help other people. Maybe they're listening and they're thinking, this is what I've done. I've had so much shame about how I am or who I am.
Right.
And working, especially around work. I have like trauma around like work.
No.
And I feel so ashamed. And then I thought to myself, you know what? At the end of the day, we can only be who we are. And then maybe it'll inspire other people to think, well, maybe 9 to 5 doesn't work for me, and maybe this doesn't work for me, and I have disabilities, and maybe it'll inspire other people to come out and not be ashamed about having their disabilities. That's what I hope.
Right. Yes, and I think you've already done that, and I definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I definitely will have you on again because these conversations are going to keep continuing, and if other people want to share their work experiences as well, but I'll definitely have you on again, and I think, with the 50-50, I call it the 50-50 project because I stated that I called it that because when I was born, my parents were given a 50-50 shot of me living or dying, and I've really tried to make the most out of the 50 I've been given, and I can definitely tell, I think everybody has their 50, and you're definitely making the most of yours, and I think sharing your trauma with the workplace and what you've experienced and how you've come out the other side of that will really help a lot of the listeners, so I definitely...
And also not even knowing what work, but knowing that you want to still, even if you're not working time in that way, you want to still do something meaningful. You want to do something meaningful, and I think that's important.
Right.
That you don't give up. Like, just because you're not working time doesn't mean that you can't do something. It doesn't mean you can't contribute to this world in a good way. And that's like what I want to do. That's why I was happy. Like, I'll come on again, and I think it's good that we could talk about this stuff because it's hard for a lot of people to understand.
Yes.
So I felt like we could understand each other and like just be honest about, because I think a lot of people are limited knowledge about it.
Right.
But
yep, I would agree. And I will definitely have you on again. I do have to wrap up for this afternoon, but I so want to thank you for coming on, and I will definitely have you on again. Is there anything, as we're wrapping up, is there anything that I always give the people that come on to tell their story? Is there anything you want to ask me or anything you'd like me to share as we wrap up and kind of come to the end of this? Is there anything you had questions?
Your post on the Facebook.
That's correct. Yep. And I'm not sure there.
Episodes, I mean. Oh, but you're gonna post this episode. I do have a question for you. Like, when you talk to other people about this, are they ever like dismissive about it, or they're just kind of like, why are you doing this, or?
I don't think dismissive would be the right word. I think for a lot of people that my friends and my mother specifically and my immediate family were extremely excited for me because this was something that they thought that I could be doing, and I'm naturally a talker anyway, so that wasn't a problem. I do think that for maybe a lot of the people that I work with or friends that I don't necessarily see on a regular basis, I think a lot of the stuff that I've covered, especially in my personal story, when I did my own episode or I had my mom on for my second episode, there was a lot that people did not know about me, of what I had gone through to get where I am today, because I do tend to be a very positive person, and my past is not something that I dwell on or talk about a lot. And I think specifically around the struggles that I've had now getting older and having cerebral palsy, I think has been really eye-opening for the people around me, because that's not something that I would normally share, just because...
You haven't let
Right. Yeah, and I knew there were going to be people that didn't react well to it. I knew by putting myself out there and having people on, that people weren't going to like it, and there would be people that would listen and be like, oh, like, and I mean instantly. And I knew that going into it, and I really just prayed. I had faith that I felt like I was really being called to do something. To give other people a voice and to give other people that platform. And it was really due to the fact that, and I've talked about this before, we just, especially around the time of the elections, I wasn't seeing a lot of talk about people with disabilities. And I knew that if I wasn't seeing that, other people weren't seeing that representation either. And so I really felt like it was important for me to put myself out there. And I knew going into it that it was going to make a lot of people uncomfortable because I was going to be sharing things that maybe I hadn't told. And there was also going to be a lot of negativity. I mean, as soon as I posted the first episode, because of the way that I am and because I can't get out physically right now, especially with COVID going on, I can't get out physically to promote it. I promote it through Facebook. And so people are getting ads, and instead of just deleting them or not joining the page, and I'm deleting them on a daily basis, I'm getting called names. They're telling me that I'm just a liberalist this or a liberalist that, when I've never really revealed my politics, or there's people. There are people that are getting the ads, and instead of just deleting it and saying they don't want to be a part of the podcast, they're mad at me because they're being spammed on supposedly on their private accounts, when you could really just hit the delete button. You don't have to join, but that is the way that I advertise. Or, I've gotten, here's another disabled person just complaining about how unfair everything is. A lot of sexual stuff that's really inappropriate that I've had to go through and delete. So I knew that was coming, unfortunately. And usually I can take swings pretty well, and, whatever, that's fine. I'm not going to sit by, especially the people coming on the program that are being brave enough to share their stories and put themselves out here like this. It's not necessary, and it really says more about those people than it does about any of us that are actually doing it.
So when you post it, can people comment on this?
Oh yeah. I usually take them down before anybody else can see them, just because I don't think it's fair to the people that are coming on the program to be subjected to.
You get a lot of bad comments?
Yep, there have been quite a few. Yeah. I've been called names, and this is only my 6th show, so I'm already getting it, and I knew that was coming, and that was something that I just kind of accepted, because I knew it was going to be, even though, I have friends and I have different experiences with all different kind of political views. I knew a lot of people would try to make it political, which it's not at all.
But you're not even talking about your
No, I'm not, but people assume that I am. So that's, but I think and I could be wrong, but I think I've heard from a lot of people, again, not my close circle of friends or family, but, maybe extended family, and then people that I interact with on a daily basis, or people that I work with that don't see the behind the scenes. When I did my first couple episodes and I talked about, everything that I've gone through and what it's taken me to get here, because you see me, and I'm sure if you see me now, it looks easy, but it has not been easy. And I think I've heard from a lot of people, in that outer circle of mine, that are just like, we didn't have any idea that you had to go through all of this. We just didn't see it this way. And I know I had my friends on, and we talked about some of our experiences in high school, and people that she knew listened to it, and they had no idea, that we were experiencing those things. Last week I posted one of me and my friend. She's Native American, and I was in a wheelchair, and so we had some experiences in high school, me with more, just not being accepted for my disability, and then her being discriminated against because she was a person of color. So, sharing those stories too, I don't think people realized as much. So I don't think it's been negatively by the people that know me, but it's been surprising to a lot of people, which I was not expecting, and has been very uplifting. People coming forward to share stories that I didn't even know had disabilities.
That's when I saw it, I never thought of like, oh, this is a liberal bitch, or I thought,
yeah.
No, she really wants people to come and tell their stories about reputation, about
right.
what they've gone through.
Right.
And I think you've been very brave, and I want to commend you on this podcast. Have managed to accomplish a lot, but also the most important thing that from hearing, like I'm very nervous about coming out because I have a lot of things that I haven't told anybody at
Right.
all, and they would be very surprised. But
Right.
I'm very scared to come out there, like because of the comments, because everything. So I think you've been very brave. But I hope, if anything, that us continuing to come on the podcast, it will help. It will maybe make other people feel more comfortable about who they are. I
Right.
think that's important because I think that it's really important to have someone who makes you feel comfortable about who you are. And I don't think I've ever felt comfortable with that, So
Oh, well, I'm so honored that you felt comfortable enough to come on, and and the important thing is too is I'm learning too. I know, and I'm very thankful for it. When I first started the podcast, I heard from a couple people that really wanted to participate, and I just didn't even think about it honestly. And it's kind of embarrassing that I didn't, but I didn't even think about. I've heard from several people that are hearing impaired, and finally, they wanted to participate in the podcast, but they need a transcript. They need something they can read. And so I'm learning too. And so we're going to start offering that in upcoming podcasts where people can read the conversations too. So that's.
I would definitely love to help this project.
Yeah.
I do transcription sometimes. I'm a writer, so
Yeah.
I definitely like to come back on again, and hopefully, you can reach people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, thank you, and I'll definitely have you on again. And I'm not sure when it's gonna post or anything like that, but it will post. And I will definitely let you know, and then I will definitely have you back on. But if if you need anything or you have anything you want to talk about, we're always here. So, and thank you so much for it, because I know that this is scary and it's not always the easiest thing to do. But I commend you too for coming on, and thank you for trusting me with it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Do you have anything else for me or anything else you want to say before we end the call?
That's all right. I look forward to speaking to you again. And again, it's very good you're doing this project. And it really made me feel comfortable talking about this stuff because I never talked about it either. So it's like if we can start to get people to talk about it, then maybe there can be more awareness about it.
Yes. And we will keep in touch because I definitely feel a connection with you. So we'll definitely have you on again. Yeah. Yeah. So, and if you, even outside of this, if you need anything, you just let me know. But I will let you know when this goes to air again. It could be a while before it does, but it will get out there. But we will have you on again, and just keep in touch with me.
Okay, great. Have a great day.
You too, Bonnie. Thank you.